hey, I like this accounting stuff. You ended up making a 98 in the class, highest grade. And that professor and my granddad really mentored me into the CPA route.
Was he going over goals or like, next you need to work on this? Or so that was you going out and self-teaching and meeting with peers and coming up with quarterly and annual goals and stuff like that.
That autonomy and that trust was just, well, looking back, was unbelievable from his part, because I know most other CPA firms would not have made the big changes that I made. And people like me would have left.
What unique challenges might we face when we buy into a company founded by a grandparent? What can we learn from our predecessor while also balancing our desire to make something our own? As we start to consider and maybe author for the first time our core values, how do we both show continuity and clarity to those existing clients? My name is Barrett Young, and this is the Art of Succession podcast. My guest today is Curtis Hardwick, and today we're going to hear about a journey that started 10 years ago as Curtis took over his grandfather's CPA firm in Georgia. Curtis, welcome to the Art of Succession.
Thanks for having me, Barrett.
You're in Georgia, so just give me a little bit of background about yourself and stepping into your grandfather's firm before we jump into that.
Sure. So he started the firm in '74 with his brother. So they were a partnership. They actually owned a Western Sizzlin', if you've ever heard of that. It used to be an old steakhouse restaurant. They owned it together. They were both CPAs and started a CPA firm and was running the restaurant at the same time. And so, of course, I wasn't around in '74, but they ended up breaking up their partnership in '95. And there's a long story behind all that. But I took over and started working with him in 2010 while I was still in college. He ran a basically 1040 tax firm, had some monthly clients, but certainly was not in the business advisory focus that I am now. So I started working with him while I was in school, passed CPA exam in 2015, and then we started talking through his transition. So he's almost exactly 50 years older than me. So it is an interesting case study in a millennial taking over a baby boomer generation. Mm-hmm. And so we started talking through what it looked like for me to take over and what I wanted with the firm. And so I don't know if you want to get into that plan now, or if you want to just hear some more background on me taking over. But
yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay.
I mean, so your grandfather was preparing taxes your entire life. You've known him as a tax preparer and a CPA, right? Yeah. CPA, did I catch that correctly?
Yeah, he is. Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, you were not scared away from that, seeing somebody in the family in that profession. Did you go to college saying, I want to do what your grandfather does?
That's a good question. I actually wanted to go to college to be a civil engineer. And so I started off in school, and there was a bridge program close to us to go from a community college to Georgia Tech. And funny enough, you just had to take Calc 1 and 2. This sounds so simple, but you had to take Calc 1 and 2 and then 2 sciences, and then they would accept you into Tech and you could go into the civil engineering program. I took Calculus 1, and I made my first D ever in my life. And so I said, you know what? I don't know if engineering's for me because I got to take 3 more of these. I ended up going back and making a B, but but funny enough, he said, so I knew that he was a CPA, had no idea what that was. Mm-hmm. I just knew that he did some tax returns because he used to do mine back in high school. And I got to talking to him one day, and he said, obviously the engineering route is not where you need to go because of the math skills, which is funny because accountants they always think you're good at math, not calculus, algebra. Right. Yeah.
Fifth grade, I'm awesome.
Yeah, do some add and subtracting, multiply and divide. But so he was like, why don't you go, stay at the community college, do a couple years there, get an associate's degree in business, and then, transfer out and see what you want to do. So I went through, I guess in the first year, if you're doing a business degree, you have to get an accounting. You have to take accounting 1 and 2 to get the associate. So I took financial accounting. My professor, oddly enough, was an ex Wall Street banker that had he retired from Wall Street, had moved down because he met his wife in this small little town with the community college and started teaching. And he really opened my eyes to financial accounting and really kind of set me on the course to the CPA. So it was about that time when I started working with him in 20, I guess it was 2010. Yeah. And, I said, hey, I like this accounting stuff. Ended up making a 98 in the class, highest grade. And that professor and my granddad really mentored me into the CPA route. And Pop at that time was like, why don't you get your CPA and then we'll see what you go. If you want to go move somewhere else and work in a different firm, great. But I liked the small town, small businesses that we were working with at that time, and all the relationships that he had built in this area. So, along with those help, I went to Georgia State and went to Georgia College, got my master's and then my CPA license.
Okay. And so did the idea of owning a firm come along in the process of doing the accounting degree in CPA, or is that like always you wanted to run a business even when you want to be a civil engineer?
It's funny. So we have an entrepreneurial background in my family. Of course, my granddad owned his own firm since the 70s. My dad ran a mobile car washing company for about 10 years, actually about 12 years. And then my aunt has a restaurant. And so, in the Hardwick side of our lives, they've all been entrepreneurs. They've all been ones that wanted to step out and do different things. And funny enough, I didn't think about firm running until we started talking about 2015 about taking this over. It was never a big dream. As I was telling some people last week, I was in Greenville for a conference, a small group conference for our tribal community. And they're all like, we started off with 0 clients and went off from there. And I said, Pop gave me so much autonomy when I was here that he's like, if you got an idea, run with it. He kind of fostered that entrepreneurial spirit. And it's interesting that, because I know one of the questions you had for me in the pre-work is like, what made you buy or like continue on the firm versus going out and buying or starting your own? And it kind of fell in my lap, Barrett. It really did. And I loved it. And I loved, again, the autonomy that he gave me to allow me to see my vision and start building what I wanted, even while I was in here running it, working with him.
Awesome. So
yeah,
when you started working with Pop in 2010, it wasn't like, come into my firm, you'll buy this thing someday. He was just giving you an opportunity to gain some experience, go wherever you needed to go. Yeah. But eventually it morphed into that. Jason kind of said the same thing on a previous episode of working for his dad gave him just so much freedom to try stuff and like a little, a safety net, or just know it's not going to blow up and other areas of the business are covered. So I really like that aspect about this. You didn't find that restrictive though? Let's get into that. 50 years difference. Probably he thought some of the things were way out of left field.
Yeah, I love the switch because we were using, when I first got here, he had a bookkeeper that was working. So it's a small firm. There's only 4 of us here at this point. But he had a bookkeeper in here that was so, green sheets. We're gonna document all the journal entries. Actually, I don't even think she made the journal entries. I think she
wrote them down
and then gave them to him to process, or to me at that point as I was becoming more senior. And so it was very old school. We were using Accounting CS, which is, I think it's a Thomson Reuters product.
It is. Yeah.
See, I don't even know now. It's funny we've moved so past that, but I said, Pop, let's get a few people on QuickBooks, because this Accounting CS, like, it's not user friendly. Like, I want clients to be able to pull up financials when they need them and all this kind of stuff. So I switched all of our clients to QuickBooks Desktop, and he's like, well, if that's what you're wanting to do, you're taking care of the monthly accounting. You make the switch. And then it quickly morphed to, this was when QuickBooks Online was starting up, and I was like, Pop, we've got to get in the cloud. Like, all the training, everything we're doing is all moving to the cloud. And so I think that hit that leeway at that point in time in my career to be able to say, we're just going to make a jump, and I'm going to figure it out, and it's not going to blow anything up. Really gave me a lot of confidence as an entrepreneur to be able to say, I can take the next step and it's fine. Like, it's going to work out. I'm going to figure it out. Where I think, as you said, restrictive there was definitely pushback when I was talking about doing this. I joke, and my wife will attest to this. She'll say, Pop's answer is always no on the onset.
Okay.
But which I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. It's until I can prove to him, and that trust finally was, and I think there is a lot of trust that comes in the relationship of granddad and grandson that is just implicit. At least for in our case, maybe that's not like that in all families, but there is, his answer was always no. And then when I started explaining it little by little, it finally turned into, okay, you can do this as long as it's your baby. And that gives you a lot of confidence as a young accountant.
Okay. Were you also experimenting with selling services at this time, or was it all converting dad's existing?
Yeah, good question. So that's really been like the last 3 years has been the transition of me taking the reins of selling.
Okay.
And so that was another fight in, hey, Pop, I'm about to increase these prices by 25% as far as, across the board, because we need more revenue, we need more profitability. And he was of that mindset. Well, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I just had such a vision of like, I want to have less clients. I want to be able to have deeper relationships with the clients we're serving, that I've got to charge a higher price point. And so it's probably been more of a 5-year journey now. Now that I think about, started about 2019 till now.
Okay.
And so, I kind of took over the reins in 2019 to where he said, you can start making those decisions as far as selling. So does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. I wanted to see if that was something you had already stepped into before deciding to buy into the firm, or if that was something you still had to wait to test.
And that goes back to he has always been hourly minded, even now, even when I price things for us, he's still, well, how many hours did that take versus, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. We're pricing on value here. I've explained this concept a lot, but it did take me, and he gave me the leeway. I mean, we did have some clients leave with those price increases that had been long-term clients with them, that he was like, it's what you're building, and I'm giving you the reins to be able to build what you want. And so that autonomy and that trust was just, well, looking back, was unbelievable from his part, because I know most other CPA firms would not have made the big changes that I made, and people like me would have left. So I'm certainly in that visionary category where I have a vision of where we're going, and how
Can't
we
get
can
there
get
fast
there.
enough.
And we can't get there fast enough. But there was a good balance with us too, because he was able to say nah or take it slow on that. But I felt hampered in some ways, but looking back on the long term, he really didn't hamper a lot of progress that I was trying to make in the grand scheme of things. In those small little battles that you have, you feel like you've lost them, but overall we've moved in the right direction.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're still in Pop's still working then. 10 years into this transfer.
Technically, he retired May 1st.
Okay.
Technically. Now, he wants to maintain an office because he just turned 84 in April. Wow. And going back to what you said before, kind of in the beginning of the conversation, was, he wasn't pushing for me to just take it over because I'm ready to retire. I'm ready to stop doing this. He had such wisdom in the way that he built his practice. He built it exactly how he wanted it to be, to where he didn't burn himself out, which is about the opposite of what most accounting firms are. All years we're burned out all the time. He intentionally structured the type of work he wanted to do and the clients that he served. Now, he wasn't pricing right. He certainly wasn't pricing right, but
right.
He built it to where it was a sustainable, that he was able to do it, till he's 84 years old, which I commend him for.
So let's go to those first couple conversations. You've been working there for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Obviously, that trust that you talked about was there because 5 years from starting to work somewhere to you're going to buy this place is pretty fast in our profession.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
I mean, how did those conversations start? Was it we're going to be partners, or did he have a timeline on the horizon? What was that looking like?
Well, he certainly. I still don't. He said if I would not have come in, he probably would have retired at 75. Like right as we. He said
sold the firm and gotten out.
I don't even know about selling it. He was just like, I'm gonna be gone.
Okay.
And I think that he intentionally mentored me in that direction, whether it was explicit or implicit at that time. But the conversations were around, and he's a very quiet guy, so it's hard to. I have to sit down and be like, all right, we're going to talk about a difficult conversation. Like come to you with this, and it was around the fact that he's wanting to slow down. He obviously sees that I have an entrepreneurial spirit behind me that's moving things forward. So it was like 2014, 2015, we started having a conversation around what does the value of the practice look like and how can we figure out a buyout strategy so that I'm compensated and also to move you in that position. So it was kind of I've got to have some clarity pop for me to stay here and because I can't just keep going year after year. and it'll work out like it's supposed to. I needed some clarity around the relationship. So those were some conversations we had in late 2014, and then 2015 is when we got to the nuts and bolts of the buyout. So.
Okay. So you had, at this time, you had not yet brought in your own clients. You were still pushing against the pricing and everything. Yeah. So you really had to do evaluation on clients that you didn't want to keep long term, but they were enough to give you a foundation to grow. I assume the mix at that time was not what you wanted it. You didn't want to just keep replicating that at a higher price.
So 1040 heavy. Monthly recurring revenue was nothing. It was all tax season revenue. And I foresaw the push that people need us to keep things accurate as we go along. That was the first thing. And then as I grew and matured in my journey, it's like, yeah, but they also need these things. They need cash flow tools. They need you to be there just to talk business with them. It's not one of those things, because he was very much like, oh, here's the financials. Call me if you need me. And I was just like, that's not how I operate at all. Like, I want to have a real conversation around what the numbers mean. So anyway, that was part of what the push was. I was like, I'm ready to be done with 1040s, probably in 2015, 2016. Like, I'm just tired of doing them, and I'm still doing them now. But which is wisdom, again, part of his, because I'm a let's burn the bridge and or cut the ties with the ship and let's go. And it really did. From a revenue perspective and from a just sustainability, Jason, talking about Jason Blummer earlier, he's very much. I think he actually burned the ships, and his dad didn't quite didn't tamper him like my granddad did. But so anyway, that's what the conversations were about. And at that time, we were valued. He was basically like 1% of gross, one times gross receipts. Whatever we took in last year as a starting point, let's go from there.
Okay.
And then we'll structure the buyout over 5 years. So, yeah, it was pretty straightforward as far as that. He kind of gave me a deal because he knew that the clients probably were not as valuable with him not being there eventually. So it gave me a good foundation.
Okay. Over 5 years, that's not terrible. You would expect that most of them would still be there at the end of those 5 years. So you're already making money off your buyout in that case.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Jason, one of the first talks I ever heard from Jason was I don't remember if it was AICPA, American Institute of CPAs or what, or just a YouTube video or something. But he's like, you need to fire half your clients and raise prices on the other half of them. So that's what a lot of us think of when we think of Jason.
And I probably took that advice as like the
It's
gold
Bible.
standard. And
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
yeah. And I'm glad I didn't in a way. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't because I feel like I could have tanked it if I was that way. And I certainly learned a lot of patience and wisdom in that time.
Yeah, that's one of the things Jason's shared, or just been for me as an influence on long-term vision.
Yeah.
And I think at that time he was very short-term, and Julie wasn't in the picture either. That's for another episode.
That's another episode.
But yeah, I mean, you saw it, 5-year buyout, 1 times annual revenue gives you a foundation to move forward with. So, I mean, on one hand, it's a fair buyout, I assume. You guys both agreed to it, to respect what Pop had done and what he had built and take care of him as he, is able to step out of that.
Yep.
But it's not like you overpaid either,
No.
where you're still paying on that 10 years later or anything like that.
Right.
Or if all those clients did leave, you're, stuck. So,
well, and we so the target retirement. So if we did it, was in 2015, starting in 2016. So if he would have, and he still worked till this tax season. So I mean, technically the original date was he was going to retire at 80.
Okay. So at the end of those 5 years,
yeah, he was going to be done. Yeah.
Okay.
And but he's one, as he tells me, and I do have some rub with this sometimes, but I love the man so much that I'm not gonna be like, you're done. He said, as long as I'm still having fun, I want to keep doing it. And I think we got to this point this year where he's like, it's like this, I'm not having fun anymore. I want to go do other things. And so
I'm surprised COVID wasn't that year for him.
Yeah, I am too. But and the technology,
especially with the buyout being done at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It was like,
he wanted to keep doing tax returns.
Okay.
Now he didn't do any PPP work or ERTC work. That was all me. But he did his 1040s, and so anyway, that's where we were.
Okay, so at the end of those 5 years, you said you took over officially leading in 2019. Then
it was 2020. I would say 2019 was a transitionary year where he was handing more responsibility over to me.
Okay.
As far as the internal things, I didn't take over officially until January 1st of 2020.
Gotcha. And you're 100% owner at that point?
Yes.
Okay. And so was it year by year with Pop? I mean, paid as a consultant? How did that work?
So yeah, from 2020 through 23, he was just paid as an employee.
Mm-hmm.
And then
based off production.
Okay. And then this past year, it was truly a 50-50. Like I just paid him a consulting fee for tax prep fee. Before it was kind of based on reasonable comp because we had an idea of where he was going to be revenue wise, and I just paid him a salary. And then this past year it was truly 50%, or for 24, 50% of production
of the work you did. Gotcha.
And he was open to that. He's like, I don't want to drain cash. I don't want to drain cash. I want you to have a good nest egg to continue on. And so I probably wouldn't work with everybody the way we did it. Mm-hmm. But again, that trust is there between us that he needed to be compensated for what he was doing. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So other than not having sold anything in 2015 when you started this, talk a little bit about the mentorship, the benefit of him sticking around for another 10 years, other than him pushing back on a little bit of stuff. I mean, he had employees in 2015 besides you when you came in? Okay.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, you said he had a recalcitrant bookkeeper.
Yeah.
Did he tell me just a little bit about the benefit you gained from that mentorship of here's how to handle employees, here's how to do the marketing, all that kind of stuff?
Marketing was zero. I've learned nothing from him about marketing.
He didn't tell you how to launch a YouTube channel and write hooks on Twitter?
Absolutely nothing. And, he comes from that time when they didn't market. Like it was a I guess, professional ethics issue.
Right. Yeah. In the 70s, it was almost illegal in many states.
I think it was. Yeah. Like he said, besides running, when you were opening your firm, you could run an ad when you're opening your firm. And then after that, it was a ethics issue. So to continue marketing, which in a lot of cases, I wish they would do that with attorneys. That would be wonderful for my morning news. But anyway, so nothing on the marketing side. Everything was organic. Everything was referral based. And so from the mentorship perspective, you have to think with 50 years of lead time on me of being one who has not only run an accounting firm, but a restaurant, has worked in all kinds of different industries as a private accountant. He just has a wealth of knowledge for whatever the situation may hold. And I did joke earlier about, I kind of said tongue in cheek, like it all work out like it's supposed to, but that is one of his favorite phrases that I feel like is one that I think about the most, is whenever you're going through a tough situation or that season where it's like, oh, I don't know if I want to keep doing this or whatever. His thing is it always work out like it's supposed to. And especially as an 84-year-old, for someone to say that at their time in life, it's amazing. And also just a consistent presence in, he's not one that has been overly like, let me help guide you in this way, but being a consistency on the back end to say, here's what I'm thinking. And again, his answer is always going to be no, or I don't think you should do that. But when he starts getting the context around what you're talking about, he has such a good key insight on best practice or how to handle this situation. Or so yeah, it's been for him to stay on. I think I would have blown up the firm if he would have truly just handed over the reins, because I would have fired a bunch of people, and I don't know, maybe I'd be in a different position, a better position. I don't know, but it's, and I feel like I've honored him in allowing him to stay on and continue to be a part of our journey. Again, I think that's probably very unique in the family dynamics that we're in. As I've heard from some people, that they feel like if they're usually as father-son or parent, it's not usually
a more direct relationship.
More direct relationship. Mm-hmm. That they will not like the employees won't respect you until they actually leave, or And I felt like he did a really good job of gracefully just handing over the reins a little bit over time. So it's worked out for us.
Okay. I mean, I know you to be a pretty driven and collaborative individual. Was he going over goals or like, next you need to work on this? Or so that was you going out and self-teaching and meeting with peers and coming up with quarterly and annual goals and stuff like that. And then you could run them by him, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like he would sit down and say, okay, next we need to focus on your ability to do this. So,
strategy is not, because I think he started this in this profession because it was steady money. He enjoyed the work, but to have a drive of like, hey, let's take this somewhere else. I think it was more, I like the work and I'm making a good living, which I can't fault him for it, but there was no, here's where we're going. It was, that's probably the time in life too, that he was in when I started.
Yep. Maybe
if he was 34 like me, he probably did have some more strategic goals and thoughts like that. But, it's been a looking over. It's been a pretty seamless transition as far as goal setting, and I'm the one who's driving the ship.
Okay. Yeah. I've seen that just I think I've known you probably 6 or 7 years. Yeah. So you hadn't even fully taken over the reins yet, but he's like, do you want to go out and network and learn from peers and get involved in organizations and stuff like that? Go for it.
I was going to say with like Thrival. So, that was mine. And I think it was like $150 a month or something like that to join that community when I did. It may have been less than that. And I was like, I don't know if we can afford that. That is like way too much, And I brought it up to him and he was like, if you think this is a good idea, and I know it's a lot of money. And it was all me jumping off and trying to.
And
network that way.
at the time, it probably the annual conference wasn't worth CPE. So he's like, why would you travel
Why would you?
for non CPE? Okay.
It's funny. I look back at that now and I'm like, if I could just join a group that I've gotten so much out of for $150 a month or whatever it was, like it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm still in
Make
debt.
those investments.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about, that was all the past and what Pop had built and what you've taken over.
Yeah.
I mean, since 2020, what are some of the big shifts that other than pricing, obviously, that you've gone through? You guys are still not just a 1040 practice. I know that much. So
Yeah. So, so this has been more of like the last 3 years. Certainly, doing pricing increases was a painful exercise, but we've also just tried to we found out the ideal client profile for who we want to serve, and have only been looking, and we're still not great in marketing. We're working with PF right now to rebrand and launch, and we can talk about that some here in a little bit. But most of it has been figuring out what is a profitable client and which one is not. Even if we have 30 plus years of relationship with them, are they still profitable, or are they still worth serving? And that's been the hardest rub that we've had over the last couple of years, 3 years, with me saying we don't need to keep doing this for $200 a year. I know it takes you an hour, and
easy.
You have such a good relationship with them, but that's not who we want to serve. So we have been, I have been internally reevaluating all relationships. So I think it was for about 3 years ago, I did go through a client inventory, or client grading matrix, which I'm happy to share with anybody that is looking to do that in professional service companies that you have ongoing relationship with, because that opens your eyes to grading clients A through F. And so it's been about a 3-year journey. The last 18 months, we've gotten rid of all the C and below from a revenue perspective, PETA factor. I don't know if we can cuss on this podcast or not, but PETA, you know what that means.
Yep, that's fine.
They meet our core values. Are they, easy to communicate with? There's about 7 different things that have gone into that grading that I came up with. And with some collaboration on his clients, we were able to say, this one's just not worth doing anymore. As I say to Taylor, who's my right hand all the time, if I have an if I see their name pop up on the phone or an email and I go, oh gosh, I don't want to deal with this, they are on the chopping block. And so, funny enough, you were talking about Jason earlier saying fire half your clients and double your prices. That's really the journey we've been on over the last 3 years, is figuring out exactly who needs to be on the ship with us, pricing them correctly. And he had some legacy clients that have naturally come into the fold, going through different growth transitions, have been open because, we have that trust that he's been working with a newspaper that we work with now since the 80s. And I have gradually doubled their price without them even realizing it. Of course, adding services and stuff. But, that was one of the ones before he's like, no, there's no way that we can increase prices on them. That's just not, just don't rock the ship. And as I had conversations with them and get offered more services, we've more than doubled their price the last 3 years.
I think there's this idea of a legacy client is automatically just going to be somebody that's terrible that you need to fire. But our top 2 to 3 clients have been with us for over 40 years. And they're also the most willing, like you said, the trust is there.
Yeah.
When we say we want to try this with you, they're like, okay.
Yep. Where do I sign? Yeah.
It's awesome because in a sense, it's another kind of relationship like you had with your grandfather of this is kind of a safety net. Obviously, I don't want to completely enrage them, but they're not going to blow up because you raised their tax return by double in your case, or you try something and it didn't work out. They're just like, okay, well, you'll fix it and move forward. And
so part of that has been as I mentioned earlier, like core value definition. We finally, I did that exercise probably like 4 years ago. You know, when you're going through the COVID crisis and thinking about what you like, I don't know, when you have more time to think about these things.
Do I
And
really want to be doing this next
no,
year?
I did. I love what I do. I don't want to admit it sound like that, but like
Yeah.
PF has helped me. The marketing agency has helped me to define those further, but getting down to an exercise of like what is the culture and the core values of our firm that are partly pop, partly mine, because I want to take the good things of what he gave to me and incorporate those into our culture and our core values. And just going through that exercise helped me to be able to say, this isn't the right client, this is not the right, because and there's a myriad of reasons for that. But I would say for anybody that's moving in a family company, involve, because when I talk about core values, or I talk about marketing or branding or something like that, when he's like, oh, that's just a logo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, there's so much more to that. And I involved him some in that process, um, in the transition for me defining those things. And he was like, oh yeah, yeah, real connection. That makes sense. Yeah. Safety. Yeah. Okay. Like that's the things that he had in his mind before. But when you start getting them on paper, it just helps to take the gray out of certain relationships.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you know your core values? Do you have them
Yeah.
memorized? Have they been
Yeah. Yeah.
finalized on that?
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
So what are they?
Real connection, trust, and safety.
Hmm.
So, which, trust is baked into what we do anyway. And so I call that one the cornerstone of how we should. So as soon as we start feeling some untrust in a relationship, we either need to bring them closer to us to be able to guide them in the right direction, or to say, no, I shouldn't say save face, but trust has to be there. So that's a cornerstone. Safety is, of course, a sense of I never want to be combative or type A in the way I come across. I want you to feel like you can bring whatever into, like I was meeting with a client this morning and I said, how you doing? He was like, I'm struggling. And you don't hear many entrepreneurs come in and say, I'm struggling to their CPA.
Yeah.
And we were talking about some family issues and how I can maybe help in a certain area. And I feel like that is living out our core values when someone can come in with vulnerability in a safe space. And then real connection for us is I don't want you to just drop off tax information at the end of the year and say, get it done and we won't talk. I try to touch base and talk to, or at least record a video for every return that I do. And also, our ideal client is in a monthly connective relationship meeting, generally meetings, but at least a video, a real connection with me. And so PF helped me to kind of bring those into focus, um, and they've helped guide me in a lot of decisions. For sure.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges of taking over an existing firm is you have your own core values, you have your own preferences, maybe even your own ideal client, what that would look like. But we can't just come into a firm and be like, well, I'm in charge now. So,
Yeah.
So you were seeking continuity of this is the firm. There's a purpose. There's a reason we take over an existing firm because there's something there that's worth continuing, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
And I think a lot of, at least in our profession, a lot of those failures come in when somebody's not bought into or doesn't understand the culture of the firm that they're coming into.
Yeah.
And so they come in and they're like, well, these are our core values now. And it's like, well, where'd those come from?
Yeah.
Your existing clients are going to be there after the 5-year buyout, after your grandfather retires. So they need to feel like there's some continuity. So that's with, and you said he didn't have those. He never would have written those down, but they were implied or implicit in the culture of the firm. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
did you get him? I mean, did you get input from the team or from existing clients? Like, do these resonate? Do these sound correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they're 100% correct. I did. Not necessarily on the client side, but certainly on our team. They're 100% what what we try to live up to. And we do. So in our weekly meetings, we have just a weekly stand-up meeting. And we try to do core value call-outs, which I think has been really helpful.
What's that?
So it's I have the core values on it's the first thing we do on the agenda is in the past week, how have people been living out our core values? It could be on our team or it could be client, generally as client, like how are they living out our core values, and give me specific examples. And then sometimes when we're in a really complaining mood, it's like how clients haven't been living out our core values. How can we bring them back? And I'll even say specific examples of how we can bring them back into real connection with us. They blew off a meeting. That is not real connection. Like that is not living out our core value. How can we make sure that doesn't happen in the future? And it's really a teaching moment and reminds us all of what our core values are. So it's pretty good.
Awesome. Working with PF, now that you've got the core values, how has that shaped the kind of client you're bringing in the future that's maybe changed or is different than the clients you brought in the past, now that you're getting into those?
Yeah, I was going to say, every dollar was a good dollar when I was first trying to take on clients. If you had, we joke, if you had a pulse
and a wallet,
you can work with us.
And sometimes the wallet doesn't even have to have money.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so it really is. So the packages that I craft now for clients is so much built on us guiding the relationship. And so we are working with entrepreneurs that are trying to break through the 2 to 5 million ceiling.
Okay.
That is our ideal client right now. It's kind of industry agnostic, but I don't do manufacturing or like high inventory. But it has helped me to the language that I use in presenting that to those clients around, we're not just an accountant that does your tax return, or we're not just an accountant who gives you financial statements, is a total reflection of that core value of real connection. Because I don't feel like just doing compliance work is creating real connection or trust. I mean, yeah, they may trust us that the numbers are right, but I want to have a deeper understanding and level. I want to know what their kids' names are and their pets and what they have going on personally, and all that kind of stuff creates that safety inside of us, so that I can know contextually that, their mom's in the nursing home. Like, we don't need to
going to shade. It's going to.
We don't need to press them. Yeah, I've told Taylor several times, like, they've got this going on. Just get done what you can and move on, because they need to have this space and that safety that they know we're taking care of things on the back end, but we don't need to press them in this time. And certainly, like I said, trust is just baked in to what we do. So does that answer your question? Or
it does, yeah.
Ramble.
Can you reveal anything else that you've done with PF as far as the rebranding goes, and why it's just staying with the family name and everything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, so part of the process I've gone through with them, they call it Accelerator, which is a 12-week kind of intensive. They have Foundation, which is more of a one-on-one coaching and trying to figure out where you want to go. And so that revealed a lot of this core value stuff. And then we moved in the fall time into naming and the brand by itself. And so the first thing I told them when we were talking about changing the name was, I don't want Hardwick to be in it, because I want to have something that is sustainable and on its own, for the long term. I know in the short term it's still going to be Curtis, is going to be Arcus. It's what we're going to be.
The name is Arcus. You said
Arcus, yeah, Arcus CPA.
Okay,
it's Latin for bridge, and so it kind of trying to paint a picture of us taking from client and bridging the gap from point A to point B. And a lot of that is in growth and consistency and intentionality. And so, I can share the new logo with you. But we're looking to launch that in September. We'll launch the website and all before, but a true brand kickoff in September. But the big thing for me was I wanted something that was memorable. I wanted something that was like foundational to what we are. I think I use that word with them a lot. Is like, I want a name that is foundational to our practice, and I wanted my name to be out of it. so that it could stand alone for me. And so I think they did a really good job with it. And I'm excited about where the marketing journey is going after this.
Kind of there also just, I guess, a little foresight on your part to your own succession plan in the future then too.
Yeah. The 50,
as far away as that might be, it might not be a Hardwick that takes over. And so
yeah, absolutely.
The firm continues on.
And when you talk about mergers, and I went through some merger talks last year with somebody, and I wish, and at that time we both said we're going to have to come up with a different name because we're in two different states. There's different state laws around accounting firms, and so we were going to have to come up with a different name anyway. And I was excited about that prospect. It's interesting talking to my granddad talking about renaming, and when I first brought Arcus to him, he was like, "What does that mean? Why don't you want it to be Hardwick? People know us as this." And he doesn't have the thought process around what marketing is anyway. He didn't have the context of what marketing is trying to do. And so I was like, "Pop, I'm trying to get this so that in 25, 30 years from now, I can easily transition this over to someone else." So that's part of the foresight into investing in that now so we can build a long-term brand.
Okay. So last year you said it was an actual merger. It wasn't an acquisition or anything like that.
It was an actual merger. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you talk through some of that?
Yeah. If you don't mind sharing, if you have permission to do that.
I got permission.
It did not go through. It did not go through.
It did not go through. And it was someone who was pretty equally sized as me, very tax heavy practice. And probably people already know what I'm talking about, so it doesn't matter. But I was looking for some technical expertise to come in. He was looking more for the advisory piece that I have been building.
Okay.
So it was a good merging of like the technical, like complex tax work with my people and advisory work that I do, that I enjoy most. And so we saw it as a good melding of the two. Went through a due diligence phase. I actually worked on it for about 3 months of talking through and having ongoing conversations. And he came back to me one day and he's like, "You are trying to scale a firm and you are trying to build something that I don't know if I want to, not that I don't want to go on the journey with you, but I don't see us. I'm ready to be done before a lot earlier than you want to be done."
Gotcha. So there's an age difference there and a timing difference.
Age difference, yeah.
Was a merger, but it was also more on his side an acquisition or a succession plan.
Yeah, correct. And I think, it would have worked out long term, but when you have somebody, and I'm thinking 15, 20 years down the road, and he's like, "I don't know if I want to be doing this for 5 more years," then you have to, I appreciate his wisdom coming to me and the courage to say, "I think we need to just stop where we are."
Okay.
So
how was that, the due diligence phase? I mean, with Pop, there's not much of a due diligence phase.
No.
I mean, how was that different? You look at a valuation of a practice that you don't want versus a valuation of a practice that kind of does align.
Oh, I did want it, Barrett.
Okay.
I did want it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say.
I was excited about it. It was kind of a little breakup for a second. You feel like you're dating someone, then you break up.
Gotcha.
In that dude. So,
but I meant the valuation of Pop's clients that necessarily you wouldn't want long term. Versus probably a very legitimate numbers based, like this is, probably not as easy as 1 times revenue or something, like actually has some metrics behind it, right?
Correct. And it was a true merger. So it was not going to be a cash.
Okay.
There was going to be no cash. It was a true, we're coming together and running the firm together. And that was one of the first things we talked about very clearly was there's going to be no Curtis clients. But we don't want silos of just Curtis has his clients and we want it to be a truly integrated firm, which I think is harder in a lot of ways.
Right.
Than just saying, well, let's merge and I'm going to keep my clients and you keep yours and we'll have a number on what your value is versus mine.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. And so I think that we were intentionally saying about a year to 18 months of due diligence, for lack of a better term, to facilitate that merger. So, which, I hear people will say they'll have a 2 hour conversation and you're like, yep, let's merge and let's do this together. But we wanted to be very intentional and lay out the steps. And so we went through 2 full day sessions together where we had an agenda and went through personal goals, where we wanted to be business wise, how we work day to day. What does an ideal day look like for you? Um, we looked at the financials, of course, to make sure that we were, similarly revenue matched, so that it wasn't. Because I think if it would have been like my revenue is like 3x, then there probably would have been some cash exchange in that deal, or at least a note on that deal. We were pretty evenly matched, and so it made sense. And then we did personality assessments. So we did the working genius just to make sure that we were in line as far as our, where his strengths were my weaknesses and my strengths were, which helps a lot, I think, with those. And at least he pulled the plug at like 3 months instead of the 18th month.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the 18 months. So,
yeah, 3 months is pretty early in that scenario. So,
but I would certainly say, and Jason and Julie, they were my business coaches for the last year, really did help me to foundationally say, you need to take this very, 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 very slow, because your brain's already thinking, let's get to the finish line here. And it took a lot of patience for me to say, you know what, let's take it painstakingly slow. So.
Okay, gotcha. Is a merger still on the horizon? I mean, you still have weaknesses, right? So, not with them, but in the future, is that still something you consider? Or?
I would say with the climate that we're in right now, I think it's probably going to be more acquisition.
Okay.
I don't have any on the horizon, but I can see, at least in our geographic area, there's a lot of accountants retired. And unfortunately, I think a lot of them are 1040 based, very, very 1040 heavy, and probably not recurring revenue heavy, which is what our focus is now. But it's not off the table, because we were having some discussions last week about acquiring firms and firing clients after you make that, and then picking and choosing the right clients that fit your needs in your firm. And, but again, I don't have anything on the horizon right now, but I'm not opposed to it.
Gotcha. I mean, yeah, you have experience of taking somebody who thought they only wanted this and growing them and getting them to fit. So I can see that working for you.
Okay. I do have some expertise in that,
yeah. Crossing state lines, though, that's how did that weigh into the decision? Is that something you'd revisit again, or was that too much complication for you?
It wasn't too much complication. I think for me, I know Georgia law. It helps to stay. And again, I know a lot of firms that I talk to have clients nationally. I'm more comfortable in this our geographic area, and that's probably what I'll market to. I'm working with PF. I've told them that's where I want to focus for now. But there is some things to certainly be mindful of. I had to break out the Georgia CPA guidebook and make sure that I had my I's dotted and T's crossed as far as what I was thinking. And so again, I'm not opposed to it, but it would be, you just have to think about a lot more.
Okay. So having gone through another due diligence process, what's the backwards looking perspective, something you should have thought about with POP?
I think I needed more clear. Again, trust was implied in that deal. We both wanted a win-win for each other. He was not trying to gouge me and get every penny cut out of me, and so I think it is a different structure than a lot of people have. Looking back, more clarity and milestones. Like, I'm glad that he's worked as long as he's wanted to work. But I wish we had more clarity around, yes, after 5 years, Curtis is, like, if he wants to continue to have you on as an employee, you can, this is what it means.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we were just kind of not as clear on like the milestones. And maybe that worked out better for our relationship. If I would have been like, you're 80 and you don't want to retire, and I'm like, you're done, it may have hurt our relationship. Um, but that's the biggest part, is just having a clear sense of what is the expectations for each partner, and having that in a clear document and signed by both people. I think we left it a little ambiguous.
As far as the complementary roles versus same, I mean, would you say you're much more like your grandfather than complemented your grandfather, other than like just 50 years age difference and all that?
Say that a different way.
So, I mean, the skills that have brought your grandfather to this point, do they line up with the skills that you see in yourself, or those 10 years of overlap that you guys have had? Are there certain things his strengths have been shoring up some of your weaknesses, other than like you with marketing, technology, things like that?
Yeah, sir. Well, again, I think the wise piece, the wisdom piece, has been invaluable. I think it's something that and the patience I've had to learn. And I'm not saying that I'm the most patient person, but the patience in situations and seasons, to instead of just jumping ship, to say like, okay, this is how I need to go. This is the next step. And there's a lot of wisdom in what he's taught me in that mentorship over the last 10 years, that is going to be invaluable. I mean, I already see the fruit of that.
Okay, excellent. All right. I do like to end my shows with a lightning round. So I've prepped you for this one. And this is just something I like to do with my client, or with my guests, with my guests, just to, find out some of your off the cuff thoughts on a couple things. So sure. Coffee or tea, first off?
Coffee.
Yep. Any particular way?
Pour over, iced.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Pie or cake?
Pie. Mom's apple pie.
I would hope, being in Georgia, pie is gonna rank higher than cake.
Well, usually it'd be pecan pie. Is more Georgia, but my mom,
favorite.
She'll do apple pie, like where she actually slices the apples and does her own dough. Yeah, it's incredible. Excellent. Once a year we get that.
What's a common belief among entrepreneurs, or maybe among your clients, that you would like to challenge?
That we're at it alone. That we're at it alone. I think that with all the connections we can make online now, I think a lot of people are going at it alone that don't need to.
Kind of like a me versus the world. Everybody's either competition or a client kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Excellent. Your favorite holiday and why?
Christmas, because my mom makes an apple pie. Not Christmas. When you get family together, and most people aren't working between Christmas and New Year's, it's just a sweet time to have family and friends all in town.
You have young kids?
I have a 2-year-old.
A 2-year-old. You're entering the golden age of Christmases.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Are you a morning person or a night person? And do you have a favorite routine?
Morning. Ideal morning is I'm up at like 5 or 5:30. I do a meditation every morning on the Calm app, 10-minute meditation. And then ideally I'm reading either a business book, a fiction book, reading my Bible, just getting the day going. It's some nice quiet time that I can journal if I need to get some thoughts out. So.
Yep. Reading and coffee. How many hours usually do you get in the morning?
Well, with a 2-year-old, that's why it has to be at like 5 or 5:30, because I'm trying to get an hour and a half in before he gets up. But I'm definitely a morning person. I get out of bed and my mind is spinning. It's already kicking up and getting ideas. So that's a good time for me just to settle, have a little break, and be by myself.
Start focused. Yeah. Good. What is one thing that you would want your successor to remember you for in business?
Yeah, this was a good question. That I was fair, that I did create safety, and that they were able to glean some wisdom off of me, in the way that I went about my life.
Safety's definitely keeps coming up. So that's awesome. Where are you finding creativity right now?
Reading. I just finished Unreasonable Hospitality, which is a big book that I would recommend to anybody of any industry. By Will Guidara, I think is his name. It's about 11 Madison Park restaurant in New York. It was a #1 restaurant in like the 2010s, and just his journey. And so I've gleaned a lot of interesting wisdom from a restaurateur. It's given me some creative spark in the business.
Awesome. Cool. And what do you have coming up other than the rebrand that's got you really excited about this next year?
So another round of like client reevaluation, which is what I did this past year a lot, and also just making sure that our focus on the marketing side, that we are being consistent with our marketing and with the messaging that we do. So I think the biggest thing right now is rebrand. We're also looking for new office space to move out of our current location.
Expand? Like larger space or just different location?
Both.
Okay.
So, and looking to hire. So if anybody listening is looking to get into the CPA firm, let me know.
Okay. So. Start opening, entry level position?
Yeah. Moldable entry level would be great.
Gotcha. Okay. I actually would love to revisit that client grading aspect. If you don't mind sticking around for a little bonus content, we can go over that. But Curtis, thank you. I appreciate you being on the interview here, and this has been really good. It's not every day that we talk succession planning, generation skipping succession planning. So
I know. Yeah.
It was good to find out some of the pitfalls, but I think mostly just benefits that you've shared with us. So I appreciate that.
It has been. I've been lucky. I've been very lucky in that regard. So thank you, Barrett.